I'm Bryan Catherman with SaltyBeliever.com, and I cannot more highly commend this book to you. This is Strange New World: How Thinkers and Activists Redefined Identity and Sparked the Sexual Revolution. It is by Carl Trueman. This is an outstanding book, especially if you're looking into the world and you're saying, I don't know where I am anymore. This is all crazy. That's the entire point here. How did we get here? And how do we understand just this rapid rate of change and what we're seeing and what's happening? Now, this is the more readable, accessible book for regular people that was built off of more of a serious philosophical textbook, if you will. Not quite a textbook, but The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self by Carl Trueman, the subtitle Cultural Amnesia, Expressive Individualism, and the Road to the Sexual Revolution. This is taking that fantastic book, wildly popular, wonderful book, and bringing it to a level that most of us can read reasonably and in excess. What Trueman is doing with this book is he's looking into the world and he's saying, how did we get here? And he's looking at it from from some sort of a philosophical perspective, looking at some philosophers with names you might recognize. Maybe you haven't read them, and saying most people haven't read them, and yet there's some sort of something in what they were saying and doing, something in the popularity as they became more popular much later down the road, long after their passing. What is going on in the world, and how did these philosophers see it? And so it's just a helpful way to say, as I look to LGBTQ stuff, as we look to just this real individualism thing and transgenderism and the rise of self, basically, we need to understand how we got here. Trueman doesn't say that he's going to give us all the answers and all the solutions, but just that he's going to give us an answer. But truthfully, as you start to see that, as it starts to unfold and starts to make a little bit more sense, it does bring about some hope, and it brings about some instruction and some ways in which we can sort of navigate this strange world we're living in. Trueman is a Christian. He is a very clear thinker, and he comes from a biblical worldview, so of course this book is going to do the same. I love this book. I found it to be incredibly helpful. It's incredibly easy to read and work through. Let's hit the nuts and bolts here. It's about just under 200 pages, 187 pages. Every chapter has just a few study questions. If you wanted to go through this with others and sort of talk through it, it creates a little book club about culture. So you get like a little section of study questions at the end of every chapter. Has a glossary of some terms, which is actually kind of helpful. Some of these terms have surfaced so quickly that I'm not as familiar maybe, and so that was really helpful. It's a really good introduction to some more recent, within the last couple hundred years, philosophers, maybe 300 years, I think maybe is the furthest back you might go, without getting into all the in-depth philosophy, but just here's who these people were, and here's how this thinking kind of emerged, and here's how they gained more popularity in the 20th and 21st century, and things like that. The book is published by Crossway, and this one came out, let's see, what's the publishing date on the copy I have here? 2022. I'm not familiar, unfortunately, with when The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self came out. I think it's fairly new as well, but this one is a little newer. If you haven't engaged with this topic at all, this is the way to go. It's complex, it's robust, and yet Trueman breaks it down into really kind of simple terms without oversimplifying. He helps give us a good roadmap, so then we can go into some pretty deep and difficult things that we're seeing in the world that are confusing, but then he explains them in a way that then when you see sort of how it's all playing out, you say, oh, that makes so much sense. I read this book about a chapter a week. Sunday afternoons, I would read a chapter and just think on it, meditate on it, and just process it. And I just found it to be rich, enjoyable. It was informative, and I think really a must read. I would say probably any high school student heading into the world today should probably read this. Any one of us who is confused at the world we see around us should probably read this. And even if we think we have a handle on the world that we see around us, I think this really gives us good places to sort of grab on and think through what's happening around us in a way that is well grounded in right, solid thinking. So that's my encouragement to you. Strange New World: How Thinkers and activists redefined identity and sparked the Sexual Revolution by Carl Trueman. I highly recommend you go out and get it wherever you get books and just start digging in.